one of the things I share is that my own personal connection with this came because I raised my hand, either at the right time or the wrong time. This is still to be determined. We were talking about this campaign, and I suddenly realized that there were all of these people who needed help, and that each one of us could do something. It may be little, but we could all do something. So I raised my hand, and I told the bishop, hey, if we all gave $10, we'd reach our goal. We'd have it $1.8 million if every United Methodist in Iowa gave $10. And somehow I found myself here. But I think about when Jesus was teaching and how the people were so eager to hear that word. But it wasn't just the word. Jesus was also healing them that day. And in Matthew's version of the story, he had such compassion on the people. He was healing them, and he stayed with them all day long. And the day grew dark, and people were hungry. And Jesus asked if anyone had something. And the little boy said, well, I've got some loaves and some fishes. And I kind of think of my $10 and your $10 as those loaves and fishes. And when we turn them over to God, there's abundance. And so what we have might be small, but God does amazing things with our gifts. And there's no telling what God's going to do when we put our $10 together. Or $20, or $100, or $1,000. Whatever gifts we're able to offer, God can do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine with them. So thank you. Thank you all for sharing and going through that exercise with us. We're going to work through the rest of this handbook now. This looks like a kind of a big daunting section, but really this is resources that are going to help us reach out to every local church here in Iowa. One of the things I think is really important is that we need to think about our churches not as individuals, but think about the natural clusters they fall into. And I want us to turn to pages 7 and 8 in our handbook. And if you look at these together, we have two checklists. One is kind of from the organizer's perspective, kind of the things they need to do with each church they're working with. And then the other is a checklist that we can make for every congregation so that we can keep track of where that particular church is. Now, as an organizer, you could call one church a week for a couple of months and make those connections individually. Or you could invite those churches that fit a natural cluster already, maybe a county or churches around a school district, to all come together and do this all at once. So you might make a lot of phone calls at once, but then you do kind of that training at one point. What we want to make sure we do is we want to find out who the person is really who's going to be engaging this campaign at the church level. That might be the pastor, but it might be the lay leader. It might be the mission chairperson. Figuring out who that contact is so that we know who to send the information to when it doesn't get lost along the way is important. There's also some kind of really basic steps here. Getting a goal form signed. Has that been done? What is their goal? There's some checklists like emailing before you have the meeting to remind them it's coming up. Sending a thank you afterwards. Calling after the meeting so that you can follow up and find out, do you need resources? Do you have any questions? Those are all kind of parts to this. And there's also places then to list what activities they have planned so that we can make sure that there's resources available for them on those days. This checklist would be something that that if you can share that information with me as you get it, also make a copy, send it my way. That's helpful so that I can kind of gauge where we are in each district. Pages 9 and 10 are all about resources. And so there's an example of a resource order form, and then there's kind of a description of what those resources are. We have poster brochures, which I think you have on the district level. They're the ones that fold out, and it's like a pamphlet. But then we also have these new posters. They're, I think they're 11 by 17s. They're beautiful, and they have a space that you can write if you have an event coming up. And so those are also available. All of these can be ordered online. but I have found our online ordering system to be difficult to work with. I'm just going to be honest. And so if it's easier for a church to call me or to email me or to fax this to me, I can directly call Nashville and say, please send this to this church, and we'll get through. So I don't know why there's bugs in that system, but sometimes there just are. So 11 and 12. This is really kind of an outline for a church to engage this 5-step plan in their congregation. And this is looking at a period of about 2 months. And so they would spend the first 2 months really doing that discernment about their goal, doing some planning and setting up these activities that they're going to do. They might have a kickoff Sunday then after they start getting this goal in mind. There might be some fundraising activities or those nothing but net style activities we did, like a lemonade stand or maybe something at the halftime of a basketball game. You might also have 1 or 2 of those Impact 100 events spread out throughout this time. And then you conclude it all with a big Sunday to Save Lives. Tell a story, celebrate what you've done. And really celebrate. 12 is a blank example of a blank form for congregations to fill in themselves and what they're doing. It's great for them to share this because let's say they have an Impact 100 event coming up, or they know they have their Sunday to Save Lives on this date. They could request for an ambassador to come and share the story that day, so that they get to hear this from multiple voices and multiple people. Page 13, I think, is a great resource. Once the church has set their goal, to think about how they're going to accomplish that. This really focuses on those 3 goals that we have in the campaign: to advocate, to raise funds, and to engage our community. And it breaks it down with what kinds of activities would be appropriate for the goal that you've set. One of the things I also think is kind of neat about this is for a church that maybe has a goal of $8,000. This might show them, you could bump up your goal a little bit more if you did some of these other additional activities. So it kind of gives some ideas of the type of engagement and depth that they could have in the course of this campaign. There's also a neat bullet in a couple of these places that describes how many of those folks you need at that $1,000 level to reach your goal. If we think back to that church of 30, they may have a goal set for $3,000. But if they can get 3 of their members to give at that $1,000 level, they've already met their goal and now they can surpass it. And so I think that's kind of a really simple way of breaking that goal down. A church that has a goal of 30,000, that may seem really daunting. But if you have a congregation of 300, you might be able to find 5, 10, 15 people who could give at that $1,000 level, maybe more. So you can be well on your way before you even get started. I think the really important thing to remember is that this is going to look different in every church. And this has a lot of flexibility with it, which is really great. I also think it's great when churches get to work together on this. Those natural clusters that we fit into, maybe that's a challenge between each other to really kind of do some friendly competition, but that could also be working together around a bigger event. If there are churches that want to do a large community event, or maybe even if the district wants to do something like that, there are some additional resources from Rethink Church to help with that. And they can help with marketing, they can help with event promotion. They're actually putting together a resource we can have for websites. And this is specifically for like if you wanted to do a 5K run. Part of the registrations and kind of keeping track of pledges and donations, there's software that allows us to do that. And Rethink Church is helping the campaign to purchase that so that it's available. So that's kind of a good resource. You do have to fill out a grant application to get that funding. But then they will help you market it and find local partners. That might be a business or a series of businesses. So it's kind of an interesting thing to look at. The rest of our packet It's all about support. All resources that you will have. This first one, this 5-step plan training, one of the things an organizer will do when they meet with those local churches is they will present this 5-step plan to them. And so in your packet there's a smaller stapled together piece that talks in more detail about that 5-step plan. I think it's right below that big one. Yeah, it's a separate packet. This was kind of our first draft of the 5-step plan, and as we've started to engage it, I'm doing some editing, and so what it will look like when it's finished is basically a local church handbook. So we're going to have all the forms they need in there. This one did not include like the blank planning calendars and that sort of thing, so we're inserting all of it into this new packet. So that's kind of the piece that's coming next. Is I'm going to put together PowerPoint that then can be used as you go to these places to lead this training. The rest of the stuff in here, if we start with page 15, these are all kind of sample speaking notes in our larger packet. So before you call up a pastor or a mission chairperson, here's where you start. This is a call script, and you don't have to use this, but if you need a place to start, this is really helpful. This also has some suggestions of what you could do if you have a negative response the first time, including, well, are there other folks I could talk to in the congregation? One of the negative responses I've already received is, we are very busy right now, or we already have our mission activities planned for 2013. That is okay. And those churches who are already planned, more power to them. And so one of our responses can be, when do you start planning for 2014? And can we get on your agenda for that? So I think that's just kind of an opening. Can we call you back in 6 months? That's okay. We do have this campaign spread out over a longer period of time. So if folks can't engage till after annual conference, that's okay. There's a sample email reminder, sample thank you letter, basic stuff, but it's helpful to have to kind of get that language down. So a sample call script for calling after you've met with those churches, just kind of a reminder of things you want to ask them. There is a whole outline for walking churches through that 5-step plan. So that's included. It's about 4 pages long. And then on 22, we get back to that, kind of how do you lead this in a worship or Sunday school class. Pages 23 and 24 walk through one of those Impact 100 events. When you're asking folks to give at that level, you're going to do it in a different way than if you're just issuing a general invitation as a part of worship. So this is an outline that really kind of invites that deeper level of consideration and giving. There's also more information in the 5-step plan packet about how you might structure one of these events. Starting on page 25, there's really a lot more information. And I could probably talk for hours upon hours about Imagine No Malaria and still have more to share. And so this is really kind of something that you can go through at your own leisure. It talks about the cycle of poverty of malaria. There's information on 27 and 28 that really dives into the details about prevention and about education and treatment. Depending on the group that you're speaking to, some of these may leave out as more important than others. And so being able to kind of, share, if you've got a group of Christian educators you're talking to, that piece on education might be important. Or if you're speaking with a group of doctors in your congregation, you might focus more on the different types of treatment and the hospital revitalization we're doing. There's a description of our global partners, that faith and works piece that we already looked at. And then at the end, starting on 32, is a frequently asked questions section. In most basic presentations, there's always going to be someone who has a question that is off topic from what you were trying to do, but is still an important question. So these are kind of some more information. The one I get most frequently is actually how long those bed nets last. And So this talks in here 3 to 5 years when they're used correctly. And by that time they start to wear anyway, so that's not true. I can't remember if this is used. They talk about ITNs there under the nets. They also call them LLINs, long-lasting insecticide-treated nets. So if you see that language anywhere. This talks about our goal. This talks about our timelines, questions about partnerships. So there's a lot of good stuff in here. And then the last couple of pages have to do with some details about how do I fill out this and how do I fill out that. This is our offering envelope. And for a church that's taking up a collection and wants to send money directly to Nashville, this would be the address you'd send it to. This could also be used by individuals to send gifts on their own. They don't necessarily have to send it through the church, so if they wanted to take this home, pray about it, add a stamp, they could do that. Something that's a great resource for our churches, and I also find this to be very beneficial. I almost never carry my checkbook, and I hardly ever have cash. But with these envelopes, you can make a credit or debit donation. You can seal this up, you can mail it to Nashville, and they'll process it. And so a local church doesn't have to worry about doing that. So that's kind of a great resource to use. You could also fill out a pledge card and put that inside. So that's why there's the mark for pledge card. Or if you've made a pledge and you're someone who wants to mail in that with a check, you could just continue using these envelopes, mark that it's a pledge payment with your name, and they'll record that as part of that. Something that probably would be a good idea is if you were the financial secretary at your church and you knew that someone filled out a pledge card, you might want to just give them 12 of these offering envelopes so they could send that in every month or however long their pledge goes for. The other side of this is how to fill out this record of contribution form. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's a description there. The financial secretary could also the same goes for someone who's made a pledge. They'd make that initial pledge mark here. But if someone then was paying on that pledge and you wanted to send it in with your contributions, they could put that there also. You can also put on here if it's given in honor of someone and make that note. Okay. I think that's our whole packet. There's some more information at the back, some other websites to check out, some books to read. That's a lot of good resources for you.
Yes.
I want to leave you guys with this image. This is a cemetery. It's in, I always say this wrong, Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And in this particular city, only 1 in 5 children will reach the age of 5. The child mortality rate is so high. Most of that's due to malaria in this particular place. And it's kind of hard to notice when you're not closer, but many of these grave markers are blank. They don't have names on them. And I think this is one of the saddest stories. A lot of the families in these communities don't name their children until they reach the age of 5. Because to name a child means you have invested in that child. We talk often in the scriptures about how God calls us by name. And so if there's not a name, you can't attach yourself to that child. And so throughout this cemetery are scattered the graves of children who have not yet been named. And I think that we can do something about that. We can help these children to grow, to be called by name, and to have a place in this world. We have a chance to help them make a difference themselves as parents, as teachers, as farmers, as business people. Some of them might grow up to be the leaders of their country. We had a retired pastor in the Rocky Mountain Conference, went with that group to Angola just recently. And he had been a missionary in Angola and worked with kids in a basketball program. And You know, when you work with kids, you never know what they're going to accomplish and who they're going to grow up to be. Well, one of the young men in that basketball program is now the president of the country of Angola. And so this pastor actually got a chance to sit down and meet with the pastor of Angola when they were over on that trip. The amazing thing is it opened up doors for vaginal malaria to really kind of get some governmental support. But I think about that story because I think about every child and the potential of their life. Every child is precious and deserves a name. And we have a chance to do something about that. There's a proverb that if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping in a closed room with a mosquito. We know the impact one bug can make. But for these kids, one bug could be the difference between life and death. And we may not have a lot to offer, but in the grand scheme of things, we have everything to offer. And so why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we give what we can? Thank you guys for being here tonight and for thinking about your involvement in this campaign. And I'm just excited about what we get to do together. So thanks for being here.